Hello and welcome back to the Motorsport Bear Hug podcast. I'm your host Didi, and joining me today once again is my friend and your co-host Vedant. On this episode, we'll be talking about the USGP. So let's grab some chai, take our seats, ready your opinions, and dive right into the conversation. Hello Vedant, it's good to have you back. Obviously, we didn't record, last week. We didn't preview the USGP, but what a weekend! And I feel so sad that I missed out on it. I had the opportunity to go out there, but it just didn't work out. And what a race it was! And there was so much more going around the weekend. That was just, it was just like a great vibe out there, and I just couldn't make it, and that makes me really sad. But it's great to be here, and let's talk about it. How was your weekend, Vedant?
Well, the race was at 12:30 at midnight. That was fine, but the qualifying was at 2:30 in the morning as such. So that just ruined the entire thing. I think I even dozed off in the middle of the race for 5 to 10 laps. But at the end of the day, the race we had, and as you said, the hype and the other things going around in at the USGP was just phenomenal. And for for something happening at 2:30 a.m., I was pretty upbeat when the final laps of the race were happening. So that was good.
Absolutely. I also missed the final few laps of the race because I was traveling. But the highlights look really exciting, and we know largely what happened. So let's talk about it. Obviously, Max Verstappen leads the drivers' championship and extended his lead by another 6 points, and has a 12-point lead over Lewis Hamilton now. Mercedes still lead the constructors' championship, but Red Bull clawed back 13 points this weekend and are now only 23 points behind Mercedes. And if you're looking at the next at least two races in the upcoming triple header, you shouldn't be surprised if you see Red Bull neck and neck with Mercedes in the constructors' championship, and Verstappen pulling away a little bit more in a couple weekends' time. But this weekend, after the first couple practice sessions, this weekend had the rear suspension controversy where people thought that Mercedes were running a rear suspension trick that allowed them to go fastest on the straights, and then everybody found out that most of the teams are doing something similar to what Mercedes were doing. It's just that the Mercedes team, has done it better than everyone else on the grid, which has been the case with Mercedes, in every aspect of the sport for the last few years. But I would put this weekend for Mercedes as disappointing because going into the weekend, Mercedes were favorite. They won here time and again. Lewis Hamilton was looking for his sixth win at Kota, I believe, and couldn't get that. And Bottas didn't have the best weekend either, having to take that sixth ICE and having a 5-place grid penalty once again this weekend. So definitely Mercedes having a few reliability issues too. But let's talk about Lewis Hamilton and his race first, Vedant. What do you think about the strategy that Mercedes, went on with? Because what I found really confusing was the fact that Lewis did a longer second stint. Obviously he did 14 laps on the mediums and then he stopped, but he did a longer first stint of 24 laps on those hards, and then did a shorter second stint of 16 laps on the second set of hards, which is kind of weird because you would imagine that your second stint should be longer because you have a lower fuel load, so you can go longer, you can put in faster laps, and the tires should last longer. Do you think it was a strategy that led to Lewis Hamilton finishing second after what was a phenomenal start from him?
Yeah, I think, at the end of the day, if you want to point it at one thing, I think it was the strategy, because even during the first stop, right, I think Hamilton pitted a few laps later than Verstappen did, and that undercut worked wonders for Verstappen. Had Hamilton, covered Verstappen immediately after, that would not have been the case probably. But yeah, I think the overall strategy with Mercedes has been the blaming point this weekend.
We saw that it wasn't the easiest track to overtake on. It wasn't the easiest conditions to overtake on. We saw Daniel Ricciardo and Carlos Sainz go neck and neck for during the first lap, and we'll talk about that later. We also saw Max Verstappen struggle during the first stint on the mediums, and he was always in that 1 second window. He was alongside Lewis Hamilton the entire time, but he just couldn't make the overtake. And I think that is what informed Red Bull's strategy, and told them that track position was so essential. And we saw that how that played out, because Lewis Hamilton could not overtake Max Verstappen, even though his tires were 8 laps younger, and he had
Yeah.
great pace towards the end. Toward the end, but you could see how the front end was washing out every time Lewis Hamilton got close to Max Verstappen, and he just couldn't keep himself in that DRS window. But yeah, I think Hamilton's strategy was less than optimal. I feel they went a little too long, especially on the second stint, the first stint on the hard tires. I think they could have cut that short, and I understand that they were trying to attack Red Bull towards the end, like they have done at a couple races this year. But it just seems that there just wasn't enough pace deficit between the two cars towards the end for Lewis Hamilton to be able to make a move, or set himself up for a couple of opportunities. But let's talk about reliability. Now, Mercedes have hit multiple reliability issues with Valtteri Bottas, but that has luckily not been the case for Lewis Hamilton. But where do you see this going? Because all three of Lewis's, all four of his ICs and all three of his other components, power unit components, are coming to their life's end, right? Obviously, he has a new IC, but his turbocharger, his batteries, his MGU, KMGH, all have been the same, and there's only been three. And it's not just Mercedes; even the suppliers have had issues. We saw Vettel and George Russell take penalties. So, do you think that Lewis Hamilton is running a risk of? And we talked about this in our previous podcast when Lewis Hamilton took the penalty in the last race. Is Lewis Hamilton is Mercedes taking a risk with Lewis's title hopes, and will they hit a snag potentially in the next 5 races that we have? Because 5 races is a lot for an engine. That is an engine usually runs between 7 and 8 races. So you're talking more than a half life of an engine over the last as we close the season down.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I mean, it has been clear for some time now that Mercedes is having troubles with its engine, and I mean, those engines are the best in the field right now. They are the fastest on the straights, but the reliability issues and the everything that goes with it has been pulling them down. When you look at it, Valtteri Bottas' 6th penalty looks baffling for a team like Mercedes, right? But I mean, if they were to take another penalty for Lewis Hamilton for whatever reason, I think Mexico or Brazil would be the key, because they don't want to leave that penalty for the last or second last race, right? So I think I mean Qatar, no one knows what will happen in Qatar, so they would want to keep it as optimal as possible. So yeah.
Absolutely, yeah, and the fact that Bottas took the penalty and it was so hard to overtake around Kota, given the conditions, he was only able to finish 6th, and that is why the points deficit in the constructors' championship came down by a third. And Mercedes are only leading by 23 points instead of 36 points after this particular round. But let's talk about Red Bull. Obviously Mercedes have the fastest car, but it seems Red Bull have been trailing a little bit on outright performance. However, they did end up taking pole, which is kind of surprising, looking at the performance going into the weekend. And that was great from Max, but a slow start, from Max is what, we thought would be the end of his race, because Lewis Hamilton has won from second in Kota twice before. So that was interesting, but I think Red Bull did a great job to take the race to Mercedes. They attacked early on and put Mercedes on the back foot. Somehow they knew that the fact that they knew that track position was more important than having tires towards the end of the race goes to show that Red Bull got it right once again compared to Mercedes, and we've seen these two teams go back and forth. So hopefully we'll see Mercedes punch back with a more holistic race. But let's talk about Sergio Perez. Didn't have a drink throughout the entire race. It was really warm out there in Austin. It was not cold at all, unlike the races previous. But what a weekend from him. He qualified third and finished third. And I think he ran a beautiful, beautiful race. And I think this is what Red Bull have been expecting from him. And if he can carry this on for the last 5 races. And, Mexico is his home race, and then he loves Brazil. So hopefully, he'll put Red Bull back into that constructors championship, title fight.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, Sergio Perez was pretty anonymous throughout the race for for a casual viewer, but when you take into account that he did not have any fluids the entire race in such scorching conditions, I think even finishing where you started, even in the second best car on the grid, is a massive achievement. And I mean, Sergio Perez has had now two podium finishes, two excellent results now, and going into Mexico, Brazil, and towards the back end of the season, I think that championship battle with the constructors' battle with Ferrari and Mercedes, and even the drivers' battle with Lando Norris, because I think they only have 1 point difference now. So
Yeah,
Sergio
yeah.
Perez is now
I mean,
involved in. I mean, yeah, that's what he wants, right? He wants to fight for every single position.
yeah, and I think his involvement and his success will be essential to Red Bull's success, especially over the next 2 weekends, because no one knows what's going to happen in Losail, Qatar, right? No one knows what's going to happen in Jeddah, and Abu Dhabi is a Mercedes track through and through from what we've seen in the past. So if you look at the last 3 races, you have 2 races where it's going to be unpredictable. We'll know as we go through the free practice sessions. We won't exactly, there's no expectations. We don't know what's going to happen. But so which makes the next 2 races in Mexico and Brazil all that more important for Red Bull from a constructor's standpoint, and for Max's drivers' championship title fight, because we saw this weekend without Valtteri, Mercedes could not put pressure on Max Verstappen. It was just a one-on-one between Max and Lewis for most of the race. Perez was technically not in the fight really, and he wasn't really pressuring Lewis Hamilton into pitting early or anything like that. I know, Red Bull tried with Perez to put him on the mediums on the second stint again,
Yeah.
and attack Lewis Hamilton so that Lewis would have to pit early, but that did not work out for them. Perez just didn't have that outright pace. However, I think it'll be essential that Perez keep himself ahead of Valtteri Bottas over the next couple of races, like we have said before. But I think great defensive driving from Max Verstappen this weekend, and it was. I watched the highlights. I missed the last few laps of the race, but it was great to see those two, keep it clean, and then just have a great race and put on a show for an audience. We had a full house at Coda this weekend, and I hope we can have that for the entirety of the season next year, wherever we go.
Yeah, definitely. Max Verstappen. I mean, having lost out on the start, and I think someone like my brother or someone I was watching the race with said that Lewis Hamilton backed the pack off during the formation lap, so that Max Verstappen would have to wait on the grid longer, and essentially, his tires would cool off. So, I mean, and that essentially made the start bad for him. But to come back, and that strategy call from Red Bull, absolutely clinical. And I mean, I'm surprised now because it was a two-stopper. It was a two-stopper. Red Bull took the undercut first and took the lead. I think I think Mercedes could have taken that strategy and that undercut approach or something similar to claw back that lead. But yeah, once again, talking about Red Bull, after that disaster in Spain where they lost out on strategy, they have been absolutely clinical. And with Adrian Newey coming back on the pit wall, I think this is Red Bull's season now. I mean, yeah. Let's see.
Yeah, but that was a great point about Lewis Hamilton bagging up the pack during the formation lap. That was really good from Lewis Hamilton from a strategy point of view, from a driver strategy point of view, and it's great that you pointed that out because I almost forgot about it. But enough about the top two teams. Let's talk about Ferrari and McLaren. I think this was as close to a dream weekend Ferrari could have had, given the circumstances. Carlos Sainz struggled to get off the line even though he was on the soft tires, and then he had a scrap with Daniel Ricciardo and ended up conceding a place to him, and then ended up conceding another place to Valtteri Bottas towards the end of the race. But Charles Leclerc drove a great race, anonymous, but what a race for Charles Leclerc, finishing P4, picking up some great points for Ferrari, and then Carlos Sainz finishing ahead of his best friend on the grid, Lando Norris, in what was a close battle between the two. But I think Ferrari have finally gotten it right. Whatever Matteo Binotto is doing behind the scenes is definitely working for Ferrari. And in my opinion, if you look at the performance differential between Ferrari and McLaren right now, Ferrari should come out ahead over the next 2 weekends, and the point difference being only 3.5 behind between the two teams. Ferrari should be ahead after 2 weekends going into Qatar at the end of the triple header. What are your thoughts?
I mean, what I believe is that the championship, the crowning of the championship would be decided before the championship is decided between these two teams. So I think that's what makes it even more exciting. I mean, basically, Max Verstappen or Hamilton can win the championship in Saudi Arabia, but these two teams will fight it out till the last lap in Abu Dhabi. And I mean, the history behind them, the resurgence behind them, the storylines, even, it just makes it so exciting. And not just that, I mean, these are the two biggest teams in Formula One, the two biggest fandoms in Formula One. So apart from the racing, it's a much bigger picture, right? And that just makes it a whole lot exciting.
Yeah, and talking about fandom, I think McLaren was voted the most popular team this weekend in the poll taken by F1. But yeah, I mean, as a Ferrari fan, I had a great weekend. The only thing that could have made it better was either, Carlos Sainz and Charles Leclerc finishing P4 or P5, or maybe a podium for Ferrari. But it's good to see, Sergio Perez on the podium too. So, no complaints there. But let's talk about McLaren. They seemed a little bit off the pace, especially in qualifying, but that has been the trend with them. They haven't been the best qualifiers. Lando Norris has put in a few phenomenal performances before. But I think they had a decent race. I don't know why they struggled. Obviously, the circuit wasn't exactly like, a high-speed circuit, which they have excelled at, like, in Austria, Silverstone, or Spa, but or even Monza. But, it just seemed that I was expecting a little bit more out of McLaren. However, what a weekend for Daniel Ricciardo. First he gets to drive Dale Earnhardt's car, and then he just blitzes his teammate on the track on merit this time. Head to head, he beat him in qualifying and in the race. And I think a little bit cheeky. I was a little bit upset about Daniel Ricciardo, bumping into Carlos Sainz in order to defend his position. But it was great to see Danny Rick back there and high up in the points, finishing the top 5.
Yeah, absolutely. Daniel Ricciardo had a pretty good weekend, but you talked about that fight with Carlos Sainz, right? That first 2 laps with both the Ferraris and both the McLarens fighting. Once again, I'm just gushing over the fact that these two teams are fighting so hard, but that is the kind of racing we want to see, and we hope that 2022 brings about. Because it was, they were so close and they were following so close. It is not, it's unimaginable in this day and age in Formula One. So yeah.
We've never seen, cars just fight it out over the entirety of the race the way, especially Carlos Sainz, Daniel Ricciardo, and Lando Norris were fighting. Obviously, Charles Leclerc checked out in the front for a little bit. It was just insane. I think that was like one of the better first laps that I've seen. Not a whole lot of not any carnage at all,
but good
some
racing.
Clean racing.
Good racing, yeah.
Clean racing all across the grid. So that was really nice. And then we also saw Yuki Tsunoda, who we'll talk about in a bit. Yuki Tsunoda defended from Valtteri Bottas for the first 10 laps, and I thought that was really beautiful too. And Zach Brown, we don't know if Cyril ever got a tattoo, but our guy Zach Brown definitely got a tattoo this weekend of that Monza track layout and the date of his first McLaren win on one of his, I think, arms. I think that was a great gesture from Zach Brown. It just goes to show how much he's enjoying, racing with McLaren and what is to come. He's a passionate man, and it just shows out there with everything that he's been doing both on and off the track.
Yeah, definitely. It's a pretty beautiful tattoo, and yeah, as you said, Zach Brown, and what he's done with McLaren, over these past few years is finally starting to pay out, and heading into 2022. I mean, we keep talking about it, but the promise McLaren has right now is, I think it's the most of any team, right? So it's I mean it's pretty exciting, yeah.
Absolutely. Now let's talk about the lower midfield of this F1 grid. Alpine, a disastrous weekend with a double DNF. Alonso was not happy with the scrap with the two Alfa Romeos. Not happy about the fact that Kimi overtook him off the track, basically, or was side by side and then overtook him by going off the track, which we can also talk about. But he had a little bit of obviously, he bumped into Kimi too during one of those incidents, but he also had a bit of a battle with Antonio Giovinazzi, and both of them, overtook each other off the track and then gave back their positions, which was really confusing.
Yeah.
But it just seems that Alonso has picked up a fight with the FIA, and he's just going for everything he can against the FIA, and even his race engineer or whoever, or the sporting director at Alpine, was pretty sassy with Michael Massey over the radio during the course of the race regarding that
Yeah.
incident, which was really funny to see. But Alpine just did not have the pace this weekend. They just didn't seem to be anywhere. But yeah, what were your thoughts on their performance this weekend?
I mean, it's disappointing, right? Alpine have been the fifth fastest car basically for most of the season, but I think AlphaTauri was clearly the fifth fastest car this weekend, and Alpine were nowhere. They were, I mean, at times slower than Sebastian Vettel even, right? But talking about Fernando Alonso, and I'm a fan, but the incident with Kimi Raikkonen was pretty funny, because he essentially pushed Kimi out, and then told that, okay, Kimi overtook me around the outside of the track. But yeah, that's racing,
and
and I mean these
I don't
guys.
think Kimi went off track. Kimi was side by side with him, and I thought it was a legal move in my opinion. But I can see Alonso's argument. I can see Fernando's argument of why he would say that. But I can also see why the stewards would not penalize Kimi for making that overtake possible. And moreover, had that been a gravel trap, and had he pushed Kimi onto a gravel trap, Alonso would have had a 5-second time penalty, automatically after that, given the
Yeah.
precedence that the FI has set over the course of the season. So I think he should count his blessing and be like, he should be happy that he didn't get a 5-second time penalty for that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it was a pretty strange incident, and rightly so. He has picked up a fight with FIA, and I mean, FIA try to be fair, probably.
Oh well, I mean,
I
FIA
mean,
tried to
probably.
do something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean, once again, it's pretty strange, these things, and hopefully, these things get sorted out, and the action is on track and not over the radio.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Now talking about AlphaTauri, I think they just got unlucky. In my opinion, Tsunoda's first stint, the first 20-25 laps, was the best driving I've seen. And I said the same thing last race after Tsunoda finished in the points, I think. But I think he's only, he's making that progress, and it shows, I feel, on the track. He defended beautifully from Valtteri Bottas during the first 20 laps of the race. And then Gasly was just a little bit unlucky again this weekend. And we've seen that time again, Pierre Gasly be unlucky over and over and over
Yeah.
throughout the course of this season. And it is just not reflected in the points. If you look at his points over the course of the season, I feel he deserved way more points, especially the way he's gone about qualifying every weekend. But getting that weekend together has just not been possible for the guys at AlphaTauri this year for some reason.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Pierre Gasly, when he has raced and when he has finished the race, has been in the top 6 and top 7 a lot of the times. And I think that was what we saw from AlphaTauri in testing, right? They were supposed to be the 5th fastest car, or 4th fastest car even. But lack of luck and Yuki Tsunoda's inexperience basically has caused them a title fight, a good competitive fight with the Ferraris and the McLarens potentially. But yeah, Yuki Tsunoda, two good races on the bounce. I think Alex Albon has been coaching him some bit, and it probably has paid off. But yeah, I mean it's good to see him, perform in the last few rounds, heading into his sophomore season next year.
Yeah, and it's essential because I had I said on this podcast, right? I wasn't sure if Red Bull did the right thing by signing Yuki Tsunoda for a second season, and that too so early in the season. Usually
Yeah.
we see Red Bull make decisions to at the very end of the season. So I wasn't very sure, but the way Tsunoda has turned things around, it seems that we might see a different kind of a drive on the grid next season. But let's talk about Aston Martin. I think Vettel drove beautifully too. I think that was another great drive this weekend. He had a little bit of a I think moment during the first few laps, and then he dropped back. Or am I thinking of Stroll?
I think the
I-
Stroll had a
Oh yeah, that's just Stroll and Nicholas Latifi had an incident
yeah.
on the first lap. But yeah, again Vettel getting that solitary point for Aston Martin, and Aston Martin's pace they haven't been able to claw it back, unlike Mercedes with that low day concept. So it'll be interesting to see how they go about their 2022 development and what kind of pace they come up with, at the Barcelona testing in March next year. But other than that, I don't really have any expectations from them throughout the rest of the season, except the fact that hopefully, they'll try their best, and we'll see more of Seb content over the next couple of months.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, over the next 5 races, if they can salvage 10 points, it would be a good end to the season for them, basically, right? But as you said, Sebastian Vettel drove a good race from P18 to P10. Lance Stroll quite unlucky, and in the first lap, I didn't see the incident. I don't know who was at fault, basically, but in the end, he just retired the car, and yeah, that was it.
Yep, and Williams not having a great weekend either. Just pretty average, finishing 14th and 15th. But they did sign a new academy driver, Logan Sargent, the American driver. Finally, is a part of the F1 family. A lot of people have been talking about why Logan Sargent is not getting a chance, in F1, or why hasn't he been called up? Why hasn't he been called up, for a test drive? But I don't think that day is too far away after this particular signing. So, fingers crossed, and maybe, just maybe, Logan Sargent will be making his way through the ranks, and maybe into Williams in a few years' time. We just have to be patient, and hopefully the results keep coming from Logan, who's had a pretty good F3 season so far. Are there any comments about Williams you wanna make, Vedant?
Yeah, no, I mean, they had a pretty normal weekend. What we have come to expect of Williams over the past few years, basically. And I think not scoring points is, I think we talked about this last weekend, that not scoring points is a surprise for them now. But yeah, I think that's where they are about, right?
Yeah, that's where their pace really is,
Yeah.
on an average weekend. Alfa Romeo, Kimi spun again. He spun in practice, and he spun, I think, at the same spot in the race, and lost out on that solitary point, giving to Sebastian Vettel towards the end, and also letting his teammate through basically and finishing behind him. But Giovinazzi did beat Raikkonen in quali. However, I think Giovinazzi lost out during the first lap to Raikkonen, was it? But again, it just seems that Giovinazzi and Raikkonen, they're about at the same place in that car.
Yeah.
And I just don't see Alfa Romeo making a step forward. They've been in the same place throughout the course of the season. We've seen Williams make a step. We've seen Ferrari make a step. We've seen McLaren make a step. We've seen Alpine make a step. But we haven't seen Aston Martin or Alfa Romeo make a step. So that is pretty disheartening. But we'll see what happens with Andretti. Are they going to buy Sauber or not? And what is in store for Valtteri Bottas and the Alfa Romeo team in the 2022 season? But I think this season pretty much a write-off for them from this point onwards. And similarly with Haas, they wrote off the season before the very first race, and I don't think that's going to change anytime soon. But yeah.
Yeah,
Any comments from you, Vedant?
No, I mean, I think with only 5 races to go, Alfa Romeo don't have enough time to really catch Williams, right? And I think, as you said, that just writes off the season because Haas is not going to catch Alfa Romeo as well. So the bottom three positions are basically secured, and it's just about maybe Antonio Giovinazzi fighting till the last lap to secure his seat, but that is highly doubtful. So we'll see what happens.
Yup, yup. And any closing comments about this particular weekend, this particular USGP weekend from you, Vedant, before we move on to a few other things that we want to talk about and then close out the podcast?
No, I mean, I think we covered everything. Uh, yeah, I mean, I think I mentioned it earlier, but AlphaTauri, both the cars in Q3 makes it. I mean, it is representative of what we thought about them during testing. So for them to finally be here and secure, be in that position is promising, and it just shows that they have, through the ups and downs, they have finally come to that position and finally made those steps from a driver's perspective and from a technical perspective as well.
Absolutely. But yeah, let's talk about W Series. Jamie Chadwick was crowned the champion once again in W Series, and Alice Powell finished second. She didn't have a great weekend in Austin, but Jamie Chadwick won both races and really nailed that championship. What a drive from her. And I think we've talked about this over and over again, but why is Jamie Chadwick not in F2? And I think you mentioned a stat, which I'll let you mention yourself because I don't remember it anymore. But I think she's a great talent, and she has not only won W Series, she's also won, I think, British F3, right? So it's just, and she's also like a Williams junior driver. So why is she not an F2? Why don't we see her drive, drive an F1 test car or something more often?
Yeah, it's pretty strange because on the one hand, yeah. So firstly, Jamie Chadwick, the double champion, and she absolutely dominated the season. She had 4 wins from 8 races and 7 podiums from 8 races. So
I mean, she just had the first bad race and that was it. From there, it was just
yeah,
uphill for her.
but interestingly, I mean, Alice Powell and Jamie Chadwick were on par, like literally equal points before USA, and then Jamie Chadwick went on to win both the races, and she even took pole in for race 2. So I mean, Alice Paul could have finished second in both, but she still would have lost out on the championship. But talking about Jamie Chadwick's F2 prospects, right, and free practice drive prospects, it's strange because on the one hand they have this series to promote female drivers, to promote female drivers in motorsport and help them get into Formula 1, and on the other they are doing absolutely nothing apart from this series, all those involved, right? I mean, if W Series and their investors and all these people involved can fund a seat for the W Series champion in F2, that would be a good step. If Williams can fund a seat for Jamie Chadwick in F2, or even give her a chance during the young drivers test in Abu Dhabi at the end of the season, or somewhere during the season in free practice, I think those are the steps that need to be taken, not just for Jamie Chadwick as a professional, but for the entire ecosystem as well.
And yeah, and we've talked about this problem with European motorsport, that they don't have the same structure as junior categories in over here in America. That they're not funding drives for drivers who are doing well in the next series up or in the next level up, right?
Yeah.
And we've talked about this problem over and over again, and it's not going to happen until the promoters or the organizers take that initiative. But yeah, it's just it's just weird to see Jamie Chadwick, who's won so much, not be at least on the F2 grid for a few seasons. yet. So yeah, hopefully something happens there. But we'll see. But in MotoGP, Fabio Quartararo was finally crowned, the first ever MotoGP champion. And what a weekend it was for him in Misano. Also, Valentino Rossi, raced his last race in Misano as a MotoGP rider. So that was also very memorable for him and all the MotoGP fans out there. But yeah, a very happening weekend in MotoGP too. Francesco Bagnaia, who had been keeping the championship hopes alive over the last few weekends, crashed out while he was leading. So kind of disheartening for him. But Francesco Bagnaia has definitely made a step forward in that Ducati team, and hopefully he'll be up there with Fabio Quartararo next season, fighting for the championship.
Yeah, definitely. I think you misread it. I mean, he's the first French MotoGP champion. I think you read first MotoGP champion, but yeah. Anyway,
Okay,
yeah,
that's what I meant. I meant first ever
yeah.
French MotoGP champion. My bad.
But I mean, yeah. Anyway, the way Francesco Bagnaia and uh, Ducati have come to fight during the second half of the season, it gives us hope that next season there will be competition for Yamaha, and it's going to be, if there's competition, and we know that MotoGP can be very competitive, and Marc Marquez will be back at his best, hopefully. So that would be an interesting 3-4 way battle in the championship next season.
Yeah, a lot to look out for in the MotoGP World Championship 2022. But in other news, Christian Langard is also set to join IndyCar with Rahal Letterman Lanigan Racing, following the footsteps of Callum Ilott, who will be racing for Juncos Racing. And then we already talked about Logan Sargent, who has joined the Williams Driver Academy, and Nico Hülkenberg will be testing the Arrow McLaren SP car at Baba Motorsport Park, which I believe is a part of McLaren Arrow SP trying to find a third driver who fits their program, fits their IndyCar program, and I think it's a great prospect. F1 drivers have been highly successful in IndyCar in the recent past, and over the years we've seen Takuma Sato win the Indy 500. We saw Romain Grosjean do really well, Marcus Ericsson, and so on and so forth. So it'll be great to see another F1 driver or ex-F1 driver on the grid of the IndyCar next season.
Yeah, definitely. And with Grosjean, when Grosjean went to IndyCar, I think the IndyCar viewership in Europe shot up. It probably would have, and I think it will happen with Hülkenberg once again. And I mean,
And I mean, with F1 not visiting Germany, we might have a huge support for Nico Hülkenberg in the IndyCar Championship, since the Germans love their racing, and having someone in IndyCar will definitely boost some of those ratings for IndyCar.
yeah, definitely. But I mean, surprisingly, McLaren have not confirmed that third seat or even the plans for the third seat now. As of now, they just said that they want to add a third seat. They don't know when. They haven't announced any plans for the next season as of yet. So it's going to be a gamble. I mean, who knows what will happen if Hülkenberg does well in the test. He may race next season, or we may even have just the two drivers currently next season with who
Yeah,
they
it
are
might just be
focusing on.
like a part-time test kind of thing, where they race the third car only at a few races, or they only race at street tracks and not at ovals, or something like that,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
But I think the general sentiment from Zach Brown and Arrow McLaren SP has been the fact that they need to find the right driver to fit their program. Otherwise, there's no point in getting that third car and just going racing
yeah,
for the sake of it.
absolutely.
But yeah, it's an interesting prospect. I'm looking forward to what happens at Baba Motorsport Park during that test, and I'm sure we'll hear all about it from Zach Brown later on in this month. But yeah, that's all from my side. Vedant, any closing thoughts from you before we end this podcast?
No, I mean, last week Oh, sorry. Before the race, I was having these thoughts. 6 races to go, 6 points different, 6 point difference. If each Verstappen and Hamilton win a race, but Hamilton gets all the fastest laps, they'll be equal on points at the end of Abu Dhabi, right? But now that Verstappen has doubled his lead, basically, I think it's just time to wrap this championship up as fast as possible. So
Oh, well, I mean, it's clear which way you are leaning now, and it's clearly towards Max Verstappen. But for the general viewership, I think this. I've said this before. We said this before. Just enjoy this season, and no matter what happens,
yeah,
whoever wins, it's gonna be a significant championship win because if Max Verstappen wins, it'll be I don't know if it'll be the end of an era for Mercedes and Mercedes domination because they have done really well this season too. But it'll definitely be a dent, or it'll be the start of the beginning of the end of that domination at least, in a way. But if Lewis Hamilton wins the championship, he'll be rewriting history books, which in my opinion is even bigger than the end of the Mercedes dominance. So
yeah,
either way,
absolutely.
I'm a happy viewer, and I'll be happiest when I see Ferrari winning that constructors championship. So I guess there's a few more years for me to be biased for that. But yeah, this season is definitely shaping up to be one of my favorites so far. Thank you, Vedant, for joining me once again, and we'll catch you next week when we preview the triple header coming up your way in a couple of weeks' time. So thank you for listening to us, and thank you for joining us once again. We'll catch you on the next one.